Carrying on with our research profiles, I'd like to welcome Professor Jim Deegan, Head of the Graduate School here at Mary Immaculate College. We're delighted to have you here, Jim.
And I'm delighted to be here, Alison.
So Jim, what is your role in the college as the Head of the Graduate School?
Well, Alison, I'm the newly appointed Head of the Graduate School. And in that role, I have oversight and responsibility for all the graduate programmes in education and the liberal arts, and all the work that's involved in that in terms of developing new programmes, taking care of supervision, external examination, and just making sure that our postgraduate students get the best possible programmes they can possibly get.
What were the key landmarks that influenced your career on this journey?
Well, that's an interesting one because my role, if you like, would be as the graduate professional educator. I'm a teacher, if you like. I'm a researcher. I'm a facilitator of graduate students, and they're on a journey of their own, of course, as well. I would say my journey began, believe it or not, in primary school when I had a very interesting teacher who shifted the goalposts from what the teacher does to what the learner learns. And this teacher was very much influenced by inquiry practices, inquiring with curiosity into your world and learning for yourself at your own pace and independently. And that stuck with me throughout all the years. And I find that being engaged in graduate work, if you like, satisfies that continuing natural curiosity in me. But then more formally, I was the first of the B.Ed graduates from Mary Immaculate College to do an M.Ed. And in those days, there were no graduate programmes here in Mary I. So I did an M.Ed in UCC, and that opened that world to me. So my progression, if you like, from primary to secondary to third level was seamless in many regards. So I've always been in graduate education of one kind or another.
Very good, very good.
And then by different turns of the wheel, I spent some time in the University of Oslo in Norway. That's really where my own, as it were, postgraduate studies into PhD work began. And then by further turns of the wheel, I ended up in the US for 10 years, and one of those years in the University of Cambridge in the UK. And they all had to do with learning to do research, mingling with people who were in the research community, learning to publish and perish, and generally speaking, enjoying that world.
What programmes do you offer in the college?
We offer a wide range of programmes, Alison, from graduate diploma through masters and on to PhD. And at master's level, we have thought and research masters. PhD, we have the traditional, or some people call it the monastic model of the PhD and the structured PhD. A major development in graduate education in the European higher education area in 1999 was what was called the Bologna Declaration. And that defined a new kind of PhD, a PhD that would have doctoral studies panel supervision as opposed to the traditional supervisor and supervisee, that wouldn't be taught as such, but would have a different learning mode through master classes, summer schools, seminars and colloquia. And that would bring an internationalizing dimension by having international scholars of repute from all over the world come to us. Either come to us through blended learning formats, come to us through teleconferencing links, or in fact visit us through our particular programmes. And also the structured PhD includes a huge opportunity for independent, self-paced learning. You can largely customise your programme to your own particular needs. And we believe this is the wave of the future, and we will be hoping to roll out more and more structured PhDs in the coming years.
Would you say there's been any key people that have influenced you?
Yes, well, I've mentioned one of them already, and he was a primary teacher. He was on the cusp of change, as I said, in changing the whole idea from what the teacher does to what the learner learns. But also he was a person that taught me one of the golden rules in being a teacher, which is what I live out, and that is you've got to be the most human of human people and the most professional of professional teachers. And I have essentially modelled and tried to live that out in my approach. So I don't see this whole graduate work as anything for very bright, very intelligent, or special people in any way, but it's a naturally occurring thing in people's curiosity.
Was there a significant turning point or a momentous occasion that made you go on this career path?
Yes, I think a significant piece for me is when you knock on that door and you're considering postgraduate work, and you go inside that door and you meet your prospective supervisor for the first time. And I met somebody in UCC at that time, and essentially, and I think all postgraduate students will appreciate this, who took a chance on me. I didn't have a very good idea where I wanted to go. I was very, very young. I wasn't sure. And he said, you seem like a good prospect. That was one turning point. Another turning point was in the late 80s, when we as a family at that stage decided to sell the new car, sell the new house, and find a good home for the dog and move to America. And that was wonderful, because there I met people who had come from all over the world to be graduate students, to live in that space and in that zone for a few years. So there were people who packed everything up in a U-Haul truck and drove from Anchorage, Alaska. There were people who were there from Egypt. There were people who were from, as I say, every point on the compass. And we lived in that zone for 3 years. And it was a wonderful place to be.
How would you describe your publications and conferences portfolio?
My publications and conferences portfolio fall into 3 different categories. I have one cluster of publications in teacher education, one in qualitative research, and the third one, I would say, in the whole area of children's social relationships.
What are the seminal publications?
The seminal publications, the most interesting one that I have in the portfolio is a journal article that I wrote for the International Journal of Qualitative Studies in Education. It's called The 3 Principles of Serendip, Insight, Chance and Discovery in Qualitative Research. And it essentially is a piece of research methodology based on the folk tale of the 3 princes that gave their name to serendipity. And that's an interesting one, I'll tell you why, because I'd say about 7 people read that for about 15 years. At least 7 people anyway, maybe 8. But what happened was that journal article got a second wind or a second life when social media became very, very prominent. Because serendipity and the whole idea of going out there and through insight, chance and discovery, meeting new people and discovering new things. So now it's actually core reading and quite a number of interaction studies programs all over the world. It's a very good point in saying to you like that you can have a good idea, but its time hasn't come yet. But if you stick with it and leave it to still there for a little while, it'll come round eventually. So that was one I did. I did another one recently on reimagining teacher education. And in that one I used complexity theory, which is, it's very, very interesting. It's an approach where you take the principles in popular science, like momentum, acceleration, flow, dependence, all these kind of things that are out of physics, biomedics, and you apply them to your everyday life. So I've just done that, and that's going to be launched next week.
What leadership roles have you played within Mary Immaculate College?
Within Mary Immaculate College, well, I tend to see leadership as something that we all do. My working kind of, if you like, formula for leadership is it's what you know and it's where you want to go. So I think everybody that works here has a knowledge base and they all have a direction and a set of signposts. So along my particular journey, what I've done is I was a lecturer originally in the sociology of childhood. I was head of education for a while, and in turn I've been the director of postgraduate studies and now the head of the graduate school. So for me, all that's a natural progression. It's almost the institution catching up with what I knew and where I'd like to go. So those are the leadership roles, but I've had other leadership roles in the learning communities. For example, in the American Educational Research Association, the Society for Research in Higher Ed. And all of these are organisations that are interested in the kinds of things I'm interested in. So I have a leadership inside, a leadership outside. And I would hope as well that I would model leadership in terms of a caring, facilitative community of practice for all graduate students.
What projects are you planning at present?
Well, that's a very interesting one, because if I can just take it back a few days, I had one of the busiest days or weeks I've ever had. I gave a keynote last Friday night to the UL Winter School. And their winter school was on equality, equity and power in Irish education. And the keynote I gave there was, sometimes you just got to listen to the kids, listening to children in Irish primary schools. And then 2 days after that, I gave an invited talk at the EU Ireland presidency in Dublin Castle. Now that's atypical, but weeks and months have gone into both of those. And I'm now working on the follow-through paper to the EU conference paper. It's a comparative analysis of teacher identity, knowledge and practice. And I'm writing that with a lady from VU Amsterdam. Her name is Anja Swennen. So I've got to knuckle down to that and get that done in the next 3 or 4 weeks. And then I'm also have a book proposal to look at what I call doctoral student journeys. It'll have a better title than that, but that's basically the gist of it. Now that we've had, quite a number of doctoral students in the arts and in education in the college, I thought it might be useful to capture their life experiences, their life stories, and not just the academic piece of that, but how their general well-being and their flourishing, if you like, of their spirits have come about through those processes. So there's a few articles and there's the book on the way.
So how does the rest of your week look?
The rest of my week looks like a number of meetings with PhD students. Lots of reassurance there, lots of kind of, as it were, giving enthusiasm and so on. We're also working on a very interesting thing, which is a graduate student exit form. Now that may seem as dry as can be, but I just come from a very interesting meeting with the graduate student representatives in the Students' Union. And it's very interesting to get those students' perspectives while they're, as it were, they're like sojourners. They're with you for a little while, and if you don't capture what they have to offer you, then it's gone forever. And it's nice of them to feed into that for the next generation of graduate students as well. So I've been working on that this morning. This was the week as well when we had MIR go live. MIR is the institutional repository. And there's a big piece of that project for graduate students themselves. And there's the other bits and bobs. We went live with our International Research Methods Summer School website, irmss.ie, if you want to check that one up.
Brilliant.
That's kind of the way the week is panning out for me.
Thank you very much for participating today, Jim. We really, really appreciate it.
And thank you very much for talking with me, Alison. I really enjoyed this opportunity.